Do you have dreams and goals that you want to make come true? Whether it's financial freedom or for a physical goal, to have some sort of physical physique, and you haven't been able to achieve those goals. The reason you haven't been able to achieve them is you haven't unlocked your full potential yet. And how do you unlock your potential? You unlock your potential when you learn self-discipline. Now me, I used to struggle with staying disciplined with my good habits. I used to always revert back to my bad habits or doing something that I shouldn't be doing. But after I learned the concepts of discipline, I was able to implement it in my life, and I'm able to stick disciplined throughout my everyday process and enjoying the. And today's video, I'm going to touch on the book, The Power of Discipline by Daniel Walter. You can check it out in the description if you want to get it. And I'm going to touch on contents of the book and how it helped me in my personal life and how it can help you with your life as well. So, without further ado, let's begin with chapter 1, which is understanding the power of discipline. So, first of all, what is discipline? Discipline is doing something that you have to do even when you don't feel like it. So how can you strengthen your discipline? You can strengthen your discipline by making healthy choices. For example, if you eat healthy foods or you exercise, those what they do is they'll strengthen your discipline. But if you make poor choices like eating sweets or eating unhealthy food or not exercising, those weaken your discipline. The amount of control you have on your discipline is based on those two factors, whether it's healthy choices or poor choices. Okay, now let's touch on delayed gratification. Now you might have heard this a lot in the self-improvement world. Every single influencer, they tell you about delaying gratification. But what does delaying gratification actually do to you? So when you delay gratification, you're actually increasing your productivity and your brain power in the prefrontal cortex. Now, another benefit of that is actually something you see in common is most of the world's successful people, they delay gratification. Now, in general, they're not obviously successful in one area, but most of the successful people are the ones that delay gratification. For example, choosing to eat a marshmallow later than now will make a major difference later on in your self-discipline and in your prefrontal cortex for delaying your gratification. Or choosing to wait before you play video games also has a major effect than playing now. Now, another thing that'll help you strengthen your discipline is focus. When you focus on something, when you focus on tasks, when you set goals and you work to achieve those goals, you're actually forcing your mind to stay disciplined, and that builds more discipline later on. Although that sounds great and all, you might come into something known as a willpower fatigue. So willpower fatigue happens when you put your discipline and your willpower all to work 24 hours. They get exhausted, they get tired. It's like going to the gym for 24 hours straight, or running for 24 hours straight. You can't do it without a break. You need to at least a break. Now, a good example of this is the Shaolin monks. Now, the Shaolin monks, they all understand that you need to at least take a break. Even though they're incredibly disciplined, they have break times within their schedules where they do take the time to relax. And that's how they were able to stay productive to do their work. Now, another good way they can also avoid the willpower burnout is to remove temptations from your surroundings, to avoid looking at temptations. Now, every time you look at a temptation, whether it's in the grocery stores, looking at foods, or looking at the sweet aisle, your brain is using its self-discipline in order to not help you get those items. Now, when you burn out, you're more likely to fall back into those. Even the most successful people, even the most extremely disciplined and well-powered people, they come across this. So you have to relax your self-discipline, and you have to avoid looking at temptations or avoid being around temptations that can set off your self-discipline to activate for it to get a chance to actually recover. Okay, now let's move on to the benefits of self-discipline. But before we touch on the benefits, I actually want to touch on a quote from the book that I actually really liked, and I want to share it with you guys. So the quote said, "Society has taught us to float through life on autopilot. The reason people reach depth is they lack that self-discipline, stop spending money on wants." Now, I thought this quote was really valuable because that's how it actually was my life back then. I lived my life drifting. I didn't have any much goals. I didn't have any real purpose or something that I wanted to accomplish. Until I discovered self-improvement, then I was able to think for myself and discover some things that'll help me and some things I actually really want to do, rather than drift through life doing things that I really don't want to do, or things that actually don't mean anything to me. Now, going back to topic, let's touch on the benefits. So benefit number 1 is it raises self-discipline. A lack of discipline contributes to low self-esteem. The main reason they suffer from that is because they aren't able to get what they need in life. They set goals, especially in January, but never stick to them, and fall back into their bad habits. And now, benefit number 2. They're better in relationships because they value integrity. Now, benefit number 3. They don't get offended because they are confident, calm, and self-assured, so it's easier for them to take an insult. Benefit number 4. They are less likely to engage in risky behaviors like sleeping with other people or taking drugs. Now, in this chapter, when he refers to you, he refers to self-disciplined people. When we're talking about those people, we're talking about self-disciplined people. Those are the benefits they experience from them. Now, moving on to chapter number 3, we'll talk about something that a lot of us humans really struggle with, and that's change. A lot of us, we try to resist change. We don't want to accept change in our life. And this chapter talks about why we resist change and how you can accept change into your life. And to start off this chapter, I actually want to read another quote that I got from the book that I really liked. So the quote says, "People don't like losing things, even if they aren't of high value. We think it does more good than harm." Now, I want to actually tell you something. Now, Bruce Lee, one of the world's best martial artists, said that you have to accept change. You have to be like water, because change is all around us. You don't know what's going to happen next. And humans, we get comfortable with our areas, get comfortable where we're with. And we feel that every time there's a change, it might bring us more harm. But actually, some changes can actually be really beneficial. Some changes you may need to require. Even if they aren't, the value you have right now is good. It's something you aren't good. You have a friend who isn't helping you, have a friend who's bullying you. Changing them and cutting them off, even though they're scary, because you already placed the value on them, you still can do it. And that was a key thing that I got from this chapter. Now moving on to chapter 4, which is something called as the Dunning-Kruger effect. I'm not sure if I said that right, but I think I did. So what is the Dunning-Kruger effect, and how does the Dunning-Kruger effect happen? Well, for example, it happens when someone is incompetent and they fail to realize how incompetent they are. That's the term that you use it in this book. I'm not using it out of harm. But for example, you have like the coworker who's always making constantly jokes, who they aren't funny, and you're constantly telling them they're not funny, but they think they're funny. Now, how does this effect have on self-discipline? Well, if you look at it, you think at some point in your life, you reach a point where you think you mastered self-discipline. You think you've mastered everything, and that it's basically like ego in another sense. You think you've mastered it. You aren't open to any ideas or learning more. That's the Kruger effect. In order to avoid that, you have to be accepting for criticism, but not any type of criticism they should be accepting, but constructive criticism, the ones that are actually meant to help you. For example, for me back in my business, when I used to run an agency as well, I used to do not a lot of outreach. I actually got on a call one time. I thought I was doing good. My ego was full until this guy that I was on a call with, he's a consultant and a coach. He told me that the main issue is I wasn't reaching enough, and I thought I was doing it. And he told me that you aren't reaching the minimum you should be reaching a day. It actually took a huge hit on me because my ego was loaded. I thought I was doing everything right. I thought I wasn't doing anything wrong. But then that constructive criticism actually helped me out to outreach more and in better ways and more platforms rather than just email outreach. Now, something real quick that I want to touch on is daily habits to help you improve your self-discipline. Now, I have made a video about Atomic Habits, a book that talks about all the habits. And this book talks about a lot of habits in this chapter. And since we already discussed them in another video, I'll link it down in the description below in the first link that you can click on to watch it. But that video has everything you need to know about habits. But what I'm going to touch on from this book is the actual habits that are used by successful people. So the actual habits that are used in this book are habit number 1, which is successful people practice gratitude. Habit number 2 is they set daily goals. They set daily goals on what they should be achieving every day, and they don't sleep until they achieve these goals. Habit number 3 is they get a good night's sleep. Now, sleep is actually really important. I don't know how many times I touched on, but it's really important because your body needs time to recover, and you're more productive when you sleep, because when you wake up, your body's more energetic, it's processed more. And they say organize. Now, this might be controversial since we have scientists like Albert Einstein who had like messy areas, but Staying organized can actually help you look so you don't scram through folders, and makes it easier for you to find everything that you're looking for. Staying organized is actually beneficial. Number 4 is they meditate and pray. So that's something they do in the morning. They do it actually before 8 in the morning. Before the day starts, they meditate and they pray. The reason they do that is because it puts their mind in a mental state of focus and self-consciousness, and helps them make better decisions throughout the day. And the last one is they read. They read in order to expand their knowledge. Knowledge is power, and no matter how smart you are, you'll never learn everything in this world. You'll need to still learn more. Knowledge is never ending. And actually in this book there's a really good rule that actually liked it when I read it, because I did not know it for discipline, and actually it helped me out a lot. What's the Lendis rule, which is a 40% rule. So say for example you're at the gym, you're working out, and then you're starting to feel tired. Now, when you reach tired at that point, you're actually reaching 40% of your full capacity. Now, a lot of people give up after that because they think they reached their limit. They haven't fully unlocked their full potential. But now that I understand this and learn it, now that's actually 40% of what you actually do. So I tested it out the other day. I tried implementing it. When I got tired, I was about to give up, but then I kept going. And I was going, I actually felt back the energy come back up again. I was able to perform more than 40%, more than I usually did. I performed a lot better and I accomplished more throughout that one day. So when you find yourself getting tired, you're reaching 40%, where your brain, the brain right here is telling you that your body is exhausted. You're only at 40%. You haven't reached 100% your full potential yet. Now, there could be something that's messing with your discipline. You might be really disciplined, but there's something messing with it. There's something called as the Parkinson's law. You tend to procrastinate when you have more time to do something than when you have a deadline set. For example, when you look at a lot of college students, or you look at a lot of students, they tend to procrastinate to do something in the last minute. Because when they do it in the last minute, they accomplish it a lot better and faster. Or you have other students who actually do it the day of it was assigned. You see, the difference between those two students is there isn't much of a difference, except the facts, the ones they procrastinate, they weren't able to do it unless they reached the deadline of the assignment. Then they were able to do it because they have a set deadline. They weren't able to procrastinate, and they were able to use more of their brain power and ability to do it. Now me, when I had to school, I used to procrastinate as well. I found myself performing a lot better when I had a deadline. When the deadline was near, I found myself to be putting in more work than I was. So a good advice that you should be setting deadlines for you and for your everyday life. Deadlines for you when you should be accomplishing a certain goal, a certain realistic goal, not something that's not unrealistic. Because unrealistic goals can actually screw with your discipline and self-esteem because you haven't accomplished them. So now real quick, let's touch on discipline versus procrastination. So discipline is doing something even when you don't feel like it. Procrastination is procrastinating something because you don't feel like it. For example, I don't want to go to the gym because my legs are sore. My legs are really sore. I don't want to go to the gym. That's an example of procrastinating because you aren't going to the gym. Or you might say something like, oh, I don't want to go to the gym today. I don't feel like it. You're procrastinating it. Or in general, it just means like making excuses, really. Now, chapter 8 of this book touches on something that's really important, which is getting used to being uncomfortable. Now, doing uncomfortable things can be really uncomfortable for us. We could rather stay in our comfort zone where we feel comfortable in not doing anything. But what doing uncomfortable things actually does is it builds your character, increases your willpower and discipline. And if you keep getting used to being uncomfortable, then you're more likely to be a high performer and an excellent performer. Now, you see a lot of the successful people are introverts, someone who are stayed in their own areas, and what they did is they got comfortable with being uncomfortable with being around people. That's how they were able to perform more. So what you should be doing is, for example, you're not comfortable with reaching out to prospects. You should get used to that. Or you're not comfortable with rejection. A lot of us fear rejection, which is why we don't approach girls. What we should do is you should try to get over that. Get used to being uncomfortable. Go to the woman and ask her out. Even if she rejects you, that's still fine because it builds your character and builds your willpower. And you can use that rejection to motivation as well. Now, chapter 11 really touches on something that I found really important, which is meditation for focus and self-discipline. So what are the benefits of meditation? So meditation, what it does, it increases the ability to concentrate and then increases focus. It helps you delay gratification and rational decision making. Now the book talks about a lot of 2 different meditation techniques. Now I'm not going to touch on each meditation technique specifically, but you can look them up. But meditation technique number 1 is the just sitting technique. You just sit normally. And then meditation technique number 2 is Shikanatsu technique. Now the Shaolin monks, they use meditation. Now don't think of meditation as something as a task. But when the monks, they use meditation, meditation is some sort of like life for them. They can't live without meditation. So you have to accept meditation as a sort of a lifestyle, not as sort of a habit that you have to do, but as a lifestyle. Because the more you meditate, the more you are clear-minded. You more have control over your brain and body. You can experience parts of your body that you didn't know. When I started meditating, actually, I started feeling more of my body than I was. I started feeling how my body blood circulates. I started feeling how each part of my body functions. Now I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but to me it does. You'd have to actually do it. Now for meditation, you actually see progress after 7 days. So if you stay consistent to meditating for 7 days, then you start seeing progress with your mindset and brain. And that's cool and all, but some days you might not even feel like it. Some days you might be sad and you don't want to do meditations. And the next chapter, actually, in the chapter 15, we're going to discuss how you can use negative emotion to help you build more positive discipline and strengthen your discipline. How to use emotions to the best of your ability. Now all of us will experience emotion. We're all human beings. We all feel emotion. Unless you're a sociopath. And that's a different story. But for the majority of us human beings, we feel emotion. Our whole life is around emotions. So how can you use each one of the negative emotions that you feel to your best of your ability? That's what we're going to touch on now. So an emotion can be envy. You might be envious of someone, you might be jealous of him. So how do you use that? So when you're envious and jealous of someone and you find yourself doing that, what you should do is you shouldn't really be negative about it. Try to use those negative emotions to see what they don't have that you want and build yourself something to get what they have. I want to get what he has. If you find someone usually he has a Lamborghini and you really wanted the Lamborghini and you feel jealous of him and envy, then what you should do is you start building yourself as someone who can afford a Lamborghini later on. It might take a while, but it's good emotions that you're using and making them into motivation rather than just staying negative. Another type of emotion that you're probably feeling is fear or anxiety, which is actually both practically the same thing. So fear, what it actually does, fear is paralyzes people. Fear gets you stuck from doing the things that you should be doing. When you're afraid of something, you really don't want to do it. For example, if you're afraid of spiders and you try to stay away from spiders as much as you can, try to get away from them. When you're afraid of doing something, that's when you should be doing it. Because when you do something, when you're afraid of spiders and you decide to approach a spider, actually, what it does is it boosts your self-esteem. Like, you can say to yourself, oh, I conquered my fear of that. Now I feel so much better about myself. You get a gain of positive emotions that conquered your fear. Now you have to start off doing this slowly when you want to conquer your fear, but conquering your fear is actually really important and beneficial for you. Another emotion you might be feeling is sadness or sorrow. Say you might get rejected by a girl or your girlfriend breaks up with you. You can use those negative emotions as motivation to build yourself in more. Don't look at those emotions like things come and go. You can't stay stuck on things that left. You have to move on. You have to accept that you can't control it. It's not your control. So what you do is you use that emotion, you use it as motivation to go to the gym, to work harder on yourself in order to improve yourself. Now the last emotion that you might be feeling is shame. That's a really negative emotion. There isn't really a clear answer to shame, but when you get shamed, you can try to use that. The best you can do is you have to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for whatever you did that you got shamed on, and then move over it, because there isn't really much way you can use it. But if you forgive yourself and move over it, you can still use some of that maintain energy from it in order to use it into more productive work and work that actually matters. The last thing I want to touch on is Pareto's principle and Sturgeon law. So what are those? So Sturgeon law is you put a lot of work in whatever you're doing with little to chance at achieving something. So you work in your business and you keep working and working and working and working and working and working. And there isn't like a high chance of you winning and achieving something. it's basically practically working without knowing the end result or what might happen. The Pareto principle is the 80-20 law. So what does that mean? So 80% of your business is made up of 20% of your customers. And how do you implement this in life? Well, 80% of your work is not gonna matter, but 20% of your work is what actually gonna give a lot of results for you. So you keep working and you implement 80%, and that last 20% is gonna get you a lot of results. It's gonna achieve you to the goal that you wanted. Now, how does this law apply for our everyday life? Now, these laws, what they do is they help you build your self-discipline, because you don't know when the next goal is. You don't know when you're gonna achieve something. You don't know when you've reached 100%, and you don't know when the 20% is. But what it does is build self-discipline and self-confidence in yourself. And actually, before we end off, I want to touch on one last thing, is burnout. Now, a lot of us in life, we might experience burnout. Burnout is caused because we experience a huge amount of stress and overwork, and our body doesn't get the time it needs to relax. So how do you avoid getting burned out? So to avoid getting burned out, what you have to do is you have to take breaks from time to time. And what you also have to do is you start scheduling, because you might be overwhelmed because you have a full schedule. You have multiple things that you should be doing. But when you start separating your schedule to certain times when you should be doing something, that's when you can avoid it. For me, for example, I go on Google Calendar and I write my schedule for the next day. When we completed something earlier than I should have completed, I start moving on to the next task of the day until I complete the whole task of the day. And each task has its own timeline for the day. And say you already reached burnout. Now, if you already reached burnout, then what you should do is you should just take a break, relax, and let your brain recover and recuperate. And now that's everything that I want to touch on from the law, and that's everything that I want to touch on from this book. Now I understand that I haven't touched on a lot of things because a lot of things in this book that are discussed are mainly about habits. Now, habits, I did touch on another video about atomic habits, a full book for itself. I think it's a 20-minute video that you can watch. I'll put it in the link below in the description that you can watch it as well. Or I'll put it up here so you can click on it to watch it, or in the end so you can watch it. And it's really helpful. It'll help you understand more of discipline. So I really recommend you watch that to find the habits that you really need in life to stick discipline to, and how you can break away from your bad habits and develop new ones so you can start building yourself to the person that you really want to be in life. And as always, thank you.